All right, so the NAWCQ is right around the corner, and there are quite a handful of decks that are looking to be a great contender, but this deck right here is arguably one of the best. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Cards and Coffee. Today we're going to be digging into the for hire variant of the Runic Sprite deck. There's a lot of debate on whether or not this or the live twin variant is the better build, but today we're going to go into this deck list and not only go over some of the cool things that this deck can do, but I'll even show you some combos at the end as well. That way, of course, if you want to play this deck yourself or at least be prepared, you can kind of halfway know what this deck does. But first, as always, please go grab yourself a cup of coffee or something. That way you guys can sit down and tune in. Let's do this. Alright, so either of the Runic Sprite variants honestly look really good going into Nationals, but the for hire variant definitely has some perks that the live twins doesn't. In my opinion, this deck does generate a lot more advantage. You do have a few more bricks along the way that you could potentially draw. Not only that, but there's also some great cards you can side deck, which we can save for another video. But I think my favorite part about this deck is how well this deck can diversify its interruptions, while not just putting everything on the board at once and losing to something like a Dark Ruler no more. But without wasting any more time, for the for hires, we are of course going to be running 3 copies of Rex. This is the main searcher of the deck. If you get this in your opening hand, your combos get very crazy very fast, and for that reason, of course, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Fossil Dig, basically being a rota for this card. By essentially playing 6 copies of Rex, you have a 57% chance of having it in your opening hand, and even though more than half the time you will be opening this card, there are going to be games where you open multiple Runic cards, so you have the potential to draw into it as well, which is very nice. The live twin variant's very nice because even if you don't see the live twin cards, you have combos to get into the live twin combo even without it. But with the for hires, while you can do similar things, you don't really acquire the entire full first turn board. But nevertheless, even though that is one downside to this deck, the perks you get by playing this engine is really top tier. Now, as far as the targets we're going to be searching with Rex, I'm actually only opting to play the one rookie for hire. I'm still personally testing the Mayhem. I think it's pretty neat, but it does technically add another card to the deck that you really don't want to draw. Yes, it does solve some of the problems with the engine, but I already don't like the fact that there's a lot of cards that I would prefer not to open with, and while you can still play if you see these engine cards in your hand, at the end of the day, I'd just much rather have Runic cards because that's just like the best cards in this deck. But after that, of course, staple stuff, we have the 1 Beat, the 1 Dampa, and the 1 Raphael. So yeah, this is the standard 10 card engine that I'm opting to play. It does take away from our non-engine slots, so if that's something you value, then definitely consider the live twin variant. But again, popping cards, having monster negates outside of Carrot, and of course drawing 3 cards outside of the fountain really makes it to where you can get so far ahead really fast. Oh, and one quick note, a lot of people like to argue that this deck is better because there's a lot of Bystials in the format and the live twins get really hurt by those cards. But in case you didn't notice, the Raphael is a light, so when you use your Rex to bring it back from the grave to pop a card, you could easily get hit with a Bystial just like the live twins. Now, after the for hires, we're playing a very standard Sprite package. Of course, 3 blue, 1 jet, 1 red, 1 carrot, and only 1 starter. I really would love the second jet and potentially smashers as well, just adding more consistency and more versatility to your sprites. But the fact that the for hire engine's 10 cards, you really just don't have that much space to mess with, so I think you just have to play 7 cards. But that's it for the first 2 engines. Now moving on to our Runics. I like to think it's pretty standard. Of course, we're going to be playing 2 Fountain, 3 Tip, 3 Freezing Curses, 3 Flashing Fires, 3 Destruction, 3 Slumber, and I've made room for the 1 Dispelling because, again, I'm not playing the Mayhem for hire. In a perfect world, I'd actually like to fit more of these. I really do think this is the engine that really bridges everything together, and the draw power you get off the field spell is really what puts this deck over the top. But since the for hires also draw you cards, you could definitely argue that you don't need that many. But again, test it out yourself. Personally, I find this ratio has been working the best. Now, after our engines, it really only leaves us least 5 slots for non-engine, unless you wanted to go over 40, which you definitely could argue, but again, I would only go over 40 if the cards I'm adding are, well, more Runic spells, because that won't decrease the consistency of the deck. But I like keeping it at 40, and the 5 that I'm opting to run is 3 copies of Evenly Matched alongside 2 copies of Dark Ruler No More. Now, hear me out. The reason why I'm opting to run this ratio rather than maybe something like 3 Dark Ruler No More and only 2 Evenly Matched is mainly because if I open double Dark Ruler No More, it really doesn't do anything, whereas if I draw multiple Evenly Matches, you can use one to bait a Spell Trap Negate and then use the other to actually wipe the field. Not only that, if I draw evenly with Dark Ruler, it works the same. So if I'm going to draw 2 or any combinations of multiples, I definitely think Evenly Match is the one you need, and if you draw another copy or the Dark Ruler, then really you're good to go when going second. You just need 2 of something besides double Dark Ruler. So that's it for the deck list. 40 cards, super standard, and like I said, you definitely could go over 40, but only if you're adding more Runics. At least that's my opinion. So really quickly, before hopping into the extra deck, I really want to thank all the people who've supported this channel, whether you've been here since day one or have newly subscribed to the channel. I'm going to be doing a couple of giveaways in the future. I'm just waiting on a couple of my sponsors to send in some product, but really I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for all the support. And if you want to help this channel grow, make sure you subscribe, comment down below, like the video, and of course if you're really trying to support the channel, make sure you go click the link down below to Next Level Anime. They're the guys that make the gear I wear now and what I wear at events, and if that's something you're into, make sure you go check them out. They are so affordable. Plus, if you use my code Cards&CoffeeTCG, not only will you save an additional 10%, but a portion of that profit goes back to the channel, helping me make content for you. But now hopping into the extra deck for the Runics, of course we're going to be playing 2 copies of Hugin, just our best level 2 extender, and of course our Searcher for the field spell. But then after that, of course, we're going to be running the 1 Munin. This is great because it's a fairy, so it gives us another type for our Folgo. It also gives us some cool time tricks we can do, plus it's a level 3, so it gives us another little trick we can do with our Rookie for Hire, so that's pretty neat. And then after that, of course, we're going to play the 1 Gary. Pretty standard, pretty staple, and there's really not much to explain about this. But now moving on to the links for the Fur Hires, we're going to be playing 2 Folgo alongside 2 of our Donner. These cards are really crazy, and what really puts this deck over the top, Folgo being able to pull the Dampa out of your deck, setting up the pop and draw 3 on your opponent's turn, and Donner obviously being removal, but really being used to tribute itself to bring back 2 bodies from the grave. Really makes for some powerful combos in this deck, but also adds some extra grind in the late game as well, because we don't have Elf, but getting 2 bodies back for free is always going to be something that's really good. But then after that, we're opting to play the 1 Masquerena. This is just here for the times that you get locked into 2s with Gigantic Sprite or Starter. There are going to be times your combos can't go into Folgo, so being able to make Masquerena and then use it to link into Folgo on your opponent's turn will not only complete your full combo when you were 2 locked, but still do the same thing by bringing the Dampa out of deck, and then you can basically proceed to pop cards and draw cards as usual. But after the IP, I'm opting to run some utility cards. I run 1 Cerberus, 1 Phoenix, and 1 Unicorn. But that's it for the links, but going on to our Exceeds, of course we're going to play the 1 Gigantic Sprite, helping bridge our Sprite combo into the other 2 engines. And then after that, we played the 1 Mannequin Cat. This card is so good in this deck. Not only does it act like a second Gigantic Sprite without locking you into 2s, but after being hand trapped, you can bring back an Ash to special summon a fire from your deck, or even if you get shifted in the Kashtira matchup, you can give them the shifter and then you get a blue from the deck. This card is so good and really completes so many of the gaps in this deck, and I love it, and make sure you're playing it yourself. It's so good. And then the last card in the extra deck that I actually have found comes up quite a bit is the 1 Djinn Buster. Just being another monster to gate without having to go into red is something that I really appreciate, especially because this deck technically can play into Nibiru. But that's it for the extra deck. Pretty standard, no sprint, because again, we're not playing the Mayhem for Hire, even though there are times in the mid to late game where dumping a Rex could come up, so you could bring something back from the grave. But before we head out, let me go ahead and show you guys one of the basic combos this deck can do. Alright, so for the first combo, really it's just going to be about a Rex and a Runic spell. Obviously, if you have Sprite cards, then this combo goes further, and of course if you have multiple Runic spells like we do here, I guess, technically this could go further as well. But for now, I'm just going to show you guys the bare minimum of what this deck is trying to do, and of course from there you can imagine with the more combo pieces you have, the further these boards can go. So starting things off, what you're going to do in the draw phase, because this deck can use these effects in the draw phase to, you know, play around Valor and Droll, we can activate something like our Flashing Fire, summoning ourselves the Hugin in the draw phase, and then using its effect, discarding a card to search. Fountain will then get added to our hand, and then we could proceed to go into the main phase. If you're playing the Live Twin variant of the deck, you cannot do this because you need your field empty for your Live Twin effects. But anyway, after that, of course, we're going to normal summon our Rex and then use the effect to search our Rookie. Rookie goes to hand, hand, and then after that, we can now activate it and tribute off the Hugin to then special summon from the deck. Since Hugin's at 2, we can then summon the Beat, which is level 3, and then right after this, we're just going to immediately link them off and go straight into our Donner. Now that Donner's hit the field, we can use the effect tributing it off to bring back our 2 for hires. They'll both hit the field, and now our Beat will activate, letting us add a for hire. Raphael will get added to hand, and then now we can use the Beat to special summon it to the field. We have 2 other for hires that are not Raphael, so we can excavate the top 2 and add 1 to our hand. Really doesn't matter. Obviously, the more Runics you have, the better. In this case, even though there's a Runic card in our hand, we're going to pretend we don't have it. Technically, you could activate the Fountain and then activate Destruction, getting out Munin. The Fountain then activates, letting you draw 2, and then now you have 3 different types for your Folgo, and you get to leave your monster negate on the field to play around something like Nibiru. But again, we're just going to pretend like we don't have an extra Runic card. So instead, all you're going to do is you'll just link these 3 off, go straight into your Folgo, and then use its effect to summon Dampa. Dampa hits the field, and now we have our pop set up because Rex is in the grave, being able to bring one of these back to interrupt on our opponent's turn. We'll activate the field spell, and then we'll pass the turn. Again, you do have this as well, and we could have went further, but we're going to pretend we didn't. Now on our opponent's turn, we can now use the Rex, banishing itself to bring back Raphael to the field. Chainlink 2 will be Raphael, and then Chainlink 1 will be Dampa. Again, we'll get to add 1 card from our deck to our hand. Then Dampa pops a card, and Folgo lets us draw 3 more. Again, I think it's pretty easy to see why this is crazy. You get 3 cards drawn, plus a pop, plus a monster negate, and you haven't even used a Runic card as interruption, which again can enable more draws also. And once you start incorporating the Sprite cards, whether it's in the first combo or in the follow-up, this deck can get really out of control really fast. So that's going to wrap things up for today's video. I would love to go into more combos, but maybe just make sure you're subscribed. I might post a combo video in the future. Plus, I have been occasionally live streaming here on YouTube, so you'll get notified when I go live. But I think it's pretty obvious this deck is so strong right now, and for a good reason. And I definitely think if you're looking for a deck to bring to Nationals, this is definitely one of those decks you should highly consider. But once again, thanks for tuning in, and thank you for all the continued support. And here's hoping to see you guys on the next one. Peace.